Hello, invisible friend. April here, and the date today is February 2nd, 2026. Welcome to episode 331 of the Big Sky Astrology podcast. This week, Uranus stations direct in Taurus and then makes a beeline for its next home, Gemini. Mercury and Venus take turns squaring off with revolutionary Uranus. Mercury enters Pisces, the land of the wandering and imaginative mind. And I answer a listener question about an obscure symbol for the sign of Capricorn, the sea goat. Before I begin the episode, though, I'd like to tell you about an online webinar that I'm offering on Saturday, February 7th about the upcoming eclipses. It begins at 10 a.m. Pacific time and covers eclipses in general, the upcoming eclipses in February and March, and how you might interpret them in the houses of your chart and in aspect to natal planets. We'll include the sign-up link in the show notes, or you can go to bigskyastrology.com/learning to get more details. I hope we'll see you there. We're going to begin this week with a very short moon report. There is no major lunation this week, but we will be taking a look at the void of course moon periods for this week. On Monday, February 2nd, the moon in Leo squares Uranus in Taurus at 2:55 p.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 4 hours, 26 minutes, and then enters Virgo at 7:21 p.m. The moon in Leo loves the spotlight and inspiring others to be their best selves. And Uranus in Taurus has a bit of a love-hate relationship with tradition. This void of course moon period occurs right around quitting time on a Monday on the west coast of the United States. Instead of leaning into the Monday blues, hit the gym or do some kind of physical activity after your work day. Your health and vitality will thank you. Use this void of course moon period to get into the habit of updating traditions to honor the present rather than getting stuck in the past. On Wednesday, February 4th, the moon in Virgo opposes Saturn in Pisces at 11:49 p.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 1 hour and 43 minutes, then enters Libra on February 5th at 1:32 a.m. This transit is occurring at the 29th degree of Pisces and Virgo. Any negative feelings could be especially intense during this void of course moon period, which happens somewhat late at night here on the west coast of the U.S., a time when many will be asleep. But if you happen to find yourself awake and you find yourself moping around and beating yourself up over something you've done that maybe you don't feel that good about, throw yourself into a practical chore. Go scrub the grout in your shower, organize a drawer, give your cat a nail trim. When life gets you down, get to work and make that a habit. On Saturday, February 7th, the moon in Libra trines Venus in Aquarius at 3:59 a.m. Pacific time. It's void of course for 7 hours, 14 minutes, and then enters Scorpio at 11:13 a.m. Pacific time. The moon in Libra is actually ruled by Venus in Aquarius at the time of this trine between the two. This would be a really lovely morning to get out and do some socializing. Since this void of course moon period occurs during the morning hours of Saturday, consider joining a group that emphasizes the arts and cultural topics. This is the morning I'm holding my eclipse webinar that I told you about at the top of the show, so you might consider joining us for that. If an astrology webinar doesn't appeal to you, hit some local garage sales, estate sales, flea markets for shopping and for socializing. Use this void of course moon to get in the habit of combining your interests with socialization. Uranus stations direct on Tuesday, February 3rd at 6:33 p.m. Pacific Time at 27 degrees 27 minutes Taurus. As Uranus completes its long journey through Taurus, which began in 2018, we're left with some very personal questions, especially about money, security, and what it takes to feel stable in the world. Taurus is the sign most closely associated with resources and material well-being, and Uranus is the planet that shakes up whatever has become too rigid or too concentrated. For example, the last time Uranus traveled through Taurus, between 1934 and 1941, the world experienced the Great Depression, a time of profound economic disruption. Historically, Uranus and Taurus seems to coincide with moments when systems that are built around money and ownership are forced to change, often because they've stopped working for too many people. During Uranus's current passage through Taurus, many of us have felt that instability firsthand. The cost of living has risen. Traditional ideas of financial security have shifted. And for many people, working harder hasn't necessarily meant feeling safer. It raises an uncomfortable but important question. What does enough really mean now? And how do we create it? One of the long-term themes of Uranus and Taurus is the breaking apart of old ideas about wealth and value. On a personal level, that can show up as changing income streams. It can show up as unexpected expenses or a push to rely less on a single source of security. So you may have found yourself trying to learn new skills, monetizing talents that you once considered hobbies, or rethinking what you truly need versus what you were told you should want. As Uranus prepares to move into Gemini in April, the focus begins to shift. Gemini asks practical questions. How can we share information? How do we stay flexible? How do we keep learning as circumstances change? This suggests that adaptability, communication, and curiosity will become essential tools for navigating whatever comes next. Practically speaking, this is a moment to ask ourselves, where have I outgrown my old definition of security? What resources, skills, connections, and ideas do I already have that could support me in new ways? And how can I stay open to opportunities that don't look like the traditional paths that I once relied on? Uranus does not promise comfort, but it does offer freedom. And that freedom often begins with a willingness to relate differently to what we value the most. On Thursday, February 5th at 4:13 a.m. Pacific Time, Mercury squares Uranus at 27 degrees, 27 minutes, Aquarius and Taurus. And this is one of those aspects that can feel abrupt and a little bit disorienting, especially in the way we think and communicate. Mercury rules thinking, speaking, travel, and the exchange of information generally. And when it comes into aspect with Uranus, changes can come suddenly and without too much warning. Plans change, conversations get interrupted, technology misbehaves. It's a little bit like a Mercury retrograde for one day. Even the weather can be unpredictable. You might find it difficult to get your point across, or you might feel like people just are not listening to you. And on the flip side, you might hold back from speaking up yourself because you just have a feeling your ideas are not going to be that well received. Part of what intensifies this aspect is the backdrop of 5 planets currently in Aquarius: the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Pluto. That is a lot of mental, ideological, and collective energy focused in one sign. With so much emphasis on big ideas and systems, personal messages can get lost. But when something does land, it can have a considerable impact. Words that are spoken during this influence can cut through complacency, can awaken awareness, can give voice to ideas that have been kind of bubbling along under the surface. This is also an aspect that can amplify rebellions, movements, and moments of truth. The Sabian symbols for this combination give a deeper layer of meaning. Mercury's symbol is 28 Aquarius, a tree felled and sawed. This speaks to the careful use of resources. And if we want to stay warm in the winter, we cannot just wait till the cold arrives. We have to anticipate and to act thoughtfully. On a personal level, this symbol asks us to be intentional with our words and energy and attention. What conversations are really worth the effort? What are the ideas that need to be shaped carefully before we share them? Uranus' symbol is 28 Taurus, a woman pursued by mature romance. This is about new beginnings, but approached with maturity and awareness. It tells us that even when circumstances feel limiting, we can stay open to new things, especially in the way we relate to our values, our bodies, and one another. So, practically speaking, this square may show up as a surprising encounter, a person, a book, a movie, some passing comment that wakes you up and reminds you of your need for freedom or independence. Pay attention to what catches your interest, especially things that irritate you. That's often where the message is. These moments can clarify what in your life feels outdated or restrictive and what needs to change. The key when Mercury squares Uranus is discernment. Not every thought we have needs to be expressed, and not every disruption is a problem. But the insights that show up now in our lives, especially the unexpected ones, can help us see more deeply and to prepare more wisely for whatever's coming next. On Friday, February 6th at 2:48 p.m. Pacific Time, Mercury enters Pisces, and it will spend a lot more time there than usual until April 14th because of a retrograde period. Traditionally, Mercury is considered to be disadvantaged in the sign of Pisces, in its detriment and in its fall. Mercury likes clarity and logic and precision, but Pisces operates through intuition, through dreams, images, and sometimes illusions. So when Mercury is in Pisces, thinking can feel less linear and conversations may wander. Facts get blurred a lot more easily, but feelings come through loud and clear. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that we need to adjust how we use our minds. This is a transit where listening becomes more important than explaining, and sensing the emotional truth of a situation matters a lot more than winning an argument. As I said before, Mercury will be retrograde in Pisces. It stations on February 25th at 22 degrees Pisces, and it won't turn direct again until March 20th at 8 degrees Pisces. So consider this a gentle heads up. The tone that you set now is going to carry forward. If you've been needing to have a conversation with someone that's a little bit difficult, maybe kind of heartfelt, this is actually a really good time to have it, especially if the goal is to understand rather than strictly solving problems. On a practical level, Mercury in Pisces asks for expectations that are a little softer. Get extra rest if you can. Mental fatigue tends to show up faster when Mercury is in Pisces. This is also a great time to get into art, music, poetry, journaling, any kind of creative writing. Anything that can let your mind drift a little bit. You may be really surprised at what floats up to the surface. As Mercury moves through Pisces, think less in terms of precision and more in terms of flow. Speak from the heart. Listen between the lines. And remember that not all valuable information comes wrapped in logic. Some of it arrives as a feeling, an image, or just a quiet moment of awareness. Venus squares Uranus on Sunday, February 8th at 1:49 a.m. Pacific Time at 27 degrees, 28 minutes, Aquarius and Taurus. This is one of those aspects that wakes us up to what it is that we want, which is a Venus word. Sometimes it happens suddenly, and sometimes it's not that convenient. Venus rules love, pleasure, money, values. And Uranus is a lot more interested in freedom, independence, and change. So when they come together in an uneasy aspect like a square, the things that we desire can change fast and sometimes without much warning. You may feel strongly motivated to break out of a financial rut because Venus rules money. Change how you earn or spend your money, or take a bold step towards financial freedom. This is a great transit for recognizing where in life you have settled for too little and where you're ready to claim something more authentic. Now, in relationships, also ruled by Venus, this aspect can be tricky. Connections that begin under this kind of aspect can feel electric and unconventional, exciting, surprising, but they don't always come with a built-in guarantee of longevity. In long-standing relationships, this is a transit that can stir restlessness. People might crave more space, more honesty, or more room to be themselves. And if they don't feel they have that freedom within the relationship, they might decide to walk away altogether. Now, that's an extreme circumstance, and this is a pretty quick transit of just a couple of days. But if you're in a relationship that has been on the edge, this can be a little bit of a tipping point. Close friendships, also ruled by Venus, can also be disrupted, especially if they've been kind of held together by habit rather than a genuine connection. At the same time, Venus and Uranus can dramatically boost your visibility. Your popularity, or even your notoriety, can rise very quickly. And you may suddenly find yourself being accepted by people who really feel like your people. If something stirs under this Venus-Uranus square, an urge to leave, to radically change your course, pause long enough to ask, is this about escaping discomfort, or is it about growing into a more honest and liberated version of myself? If it's handled consciously, this transit does not have to break things apart. Instead, it can just encourage us to renegotiate our relationships with love, money, and belonging so that they better reflect the freedom that you're really looking for. In this week's listener question, listener Margot writes, after a few years working with astrology, I've managed to get a grasp of every zodiac symbol except for Capricorn. At my very first astrology reading years ago, I distinctly remember being relieved I was not a Capricorn because I was so weirded out by the sea goat. Though I now know that I have 2 Capricorn planets. My conundrum is this: what in the world is a sea goat? Scales and Chinese dragons and twins I'm at home with. But why is a goat plunked on top of a mermaid tail? Are there other symbols representing the Capricorn zodiac sign other than the sea goat? Please help me and fellow confused Cappies understand. P.S. I always feel sorry for the sea goat because it seems like it can't swim well, and that tail must really get roughed up on the mountainscape. Listener Margot, this is a great question, and I share your sympathy for the sea goat. Capricorn's symbol goes all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia, where it was associated with the god E, or Enki, a deity of wisdom, creation, and the life-giving waters. The sea goat is a hybrid creature because Capricorn itself is a hybrid sign. It lives between 2 worlds, the worlds of earth and water, material reality and emotional depth, ambition and vulnerability. The goat part climbs the mountain. That's the familiar Capricorn image. Effort and persistence, realism, and that slow, patient push toward mastery. But the fish tail tells the other half of the story. Capricorns are far more sensitive, intuitive, and emotionally aware than their reputation would lead you to believe. They don't start at the summit. They rise out of deep and unspoken emotional waters, carrying memory, responsibility, and ancestral weight with them. As for alternative symbols, yes, there are a few. Capricorn has long been associated with just the regular goat, of course, the mountain goat, the elder, the gatekeeper, the builder. In medieval astrology, Saturn, which is Capricorn's ruler, was often depicted as Father Time. And that reminds us that Capricorn governs time, maturity, and the wisdom that we earn through experience. And don't worry about the sea goat's tail. Capricorn isn't meant to live only on the mountain or only in the sea. It moves back and forth between the two. So that's why Capricorn placements often feel a little out of place early in life and grow into themselves with age. The sea goat looks awkward until you realize it's built for a very long journey. And yes, congratulations on your Capricorn planets. You are not here necessarily to be comfortable. You're here to become capable and wise and enduring. And the sea goat knows exactly where it's going. Margot, thank you so much for this question. Honestly, I've always wondered about that sea goat symbol, and this inspired me to do a little bit of homework and learn more about it myself. If you have a burning question about astrology that you would like me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, leave a voicemail of 1 minute or less at speakpipe.com/bigskyastrologypodcast, or drop me an email at april@bigskyastrology.com, and be sure to put podcast question in the subject line. Well, that is everything on my show sheet, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you for listening to the Big Sky Astrology Podcast. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe or follow the show in your app of choice. Leave a rating or review, and I hope that you'll help spread the word by telling an astrology-loving friend about the podcast. You can read show notes and full transcripts and leave your comments about each episode at bigskyastropod.com. Thank you so much to everyone who has shown support for the podcast over the years, and in particular during my September podathon. On each episode, I'm thanking some of my financial donors by name. This week, let's give a Big Sky Astrology Podcast shout-out to new donors Liz, George, and listener Jamie. Jamie and Liz, thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for supporting the show with your donations. If you would like to support the show and receive access to my bonus video episodes for donors only, please go to bigskyastropod.com and make a contribution of $10 or more to gain access to those episodes. You can also make a one-time donation in any amount or become an ongoing monthly contributor. That's it for this episode. Join me again bright and early next Monday. And until then, keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the stars.